Welcome back, friends. This is session 5 in the topic of gaseous exchange and respiration. The facilitator in this session, I am Dr. Mlelwa, and today we are going to start about the structure of the alveoli, its adaptation, and the mechanism of gaseous exchange at the alveoli. So just stay tuned. I will spend about 40 minutes discussing about these things, and I hope you will understand and you'll be able to tackle different questions regarding this part. So by starting, alveoli is the functional unit of the lungs. When we are talking of the gaseous exchange, where exactly happens in the lungs is at the alveoli. So at the alveoli is where in the lungs gaseous exchange exactly takes place. So the alveoli form the gas exchange surface. There are over 7 million of alveoli, 700 million alveoli present in the human lung. And all of these alveoli, they provide a very large surface area in the lungs which enable the process of gaseous exchange. So if we are continuing to the next page, let's kuona kwamba hiyo very large surface area wanasema kwamba hiyo very large surface area, the next page which continue to explain about the structure of the alveoli, this one. So a 700 million of alveoli, they represent a total of 70 to 90 meters square. Kwa kama unaweza kuona uwanja wa mpira huo unakuwa ni 100 meters square. So the total surface area of alveoli is almost about the football pitch, almost about. Kunaweza kuona the wall of each alveoli is only 0.001 millimeter or 0.1 micrometer thick. So this is very thin. Kama tulivyosema kwamba gaseous exchange is efficient. Gaseous exchange is efficient when you have a small distance of diffusion, or the thickness for gases to pass is small. So what we are saying here is that the alveoli, they are many in number and they increase the surface area for gaseous exchange. So regarding its structure, on outside it is dense network of blood capillaries, all of which originate from the pulmonary artery and rejoin from the pulmonary vein. So as we said, the lungs, they are supplied by the pulmonary artery, and the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. The only artery which carries deoxygenated blood is the pulmonary artery. So pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs, and then after the blood being oxygenated, it is carried by the pulmonary vein to the heart again for pumping to other parts of the body. So what we are saying about the alveoli is that it contains dense network of capillaries which originate from the pulmonary artery and they rejoin from the pulmonary vein. Lining each alveolus is moist squamous epithelium, or you can say moist simple squamous epithelium. The moist simple squamous epithelium, they ease the process of gaseous exchange. being moist and the gas they are exchanging in the moist state. That's why being moist increase the rate of gaseous exchange. Also, because they are squamous means they are flat, so they decrease the distance for diffusion of the gases. This consists of very thin, flattened cell, reducing the distance over which diffusion must occur. So these moist squamous epithelium or moist simple, we are calling them simple because they are one layer. So these moist simple squamous epithelium, they consist of very thin and flattened cells, reducing the distance for diffusion, to occur. Also, we have the collagen and elastic fibers. And the elastic fiber help to recoil or help in the recoiling of the alveoli. So, as we know, alveoli tend to expand and it needs to recoil because it expands during inspiration. So, if we are doing inspiration, unavuta hewa ndani, that means unavuta hewa, alveoli zina expand. So zinapo expand, manake lazima kuwe kuna kitu kinachofanya irudi kwenye shape yake. So that function is performed by the elastic fiber because they are elastic in nature. That's why they are called as elastic fiber. So in absence of elastic fiber, it could be difficult for the alveoli to recoil au isinge recoil kabisa. So unaona hapa anasema the latter. Ukiona ameandika collagen and elastic fiber, hapo mkuja kuandikia the latter. That means collagen and elastic fiber ni two things. So the latter manake ni ile mbele baada end. So the latter, which is elastic fiber, allow the alveoli to expand and recoil easier during breathing. Special cells in the alveolus wall secrete a detergent-like chemical on the inside lining of the alveolus. This is called the surfactant. So we have also we have the pneumocyte type 2, because I said in the alveoli you have simple squamous cell epithelium which are moist and they perform their function of gaseous exchange. We have another type of cell which secretes surfactant in the inside lining of the alveoli. Also we have the collagen and elastic fibers. We have the network of capillaries which are originating from the pulmonary artery and they join to form the pulmonary vein. So therefore in the lungs or in the alveoli we have three types of cells. We have these, what you can call the simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium. We have simple squamous epithelium. Then from there we have the alveolar macrophages. From there we have the surfactant producing cell. So simple squamous epithelium, they are sometimes called the pneumocyte type 1. Pneumocyte type 1. These alveolar macrophages, they are called alveolar macrophages the same, but sometimes the surfactant producing cells, they are called the pneumocyte type 2. So we have pneumocyte type 1, pneumocyte type 2, and the alveolar macrophages. So what we are going to discuss here is the function of each type of cell in the alveoli. What is the function of macrophages? What is the function of the simple squamous epithelium? And what is the function of the surfactant producing cells? So as we said, simple squamous cell epithelium, they perform the function of gaseous exchange itself. So gaseous exchange, gas zinakuwa zinapita kupitia simple squamous cell epithelium. Alveolar macrophages zinafanya kazi ya protect the lungs with the different number of bacteria. Kama unavyojua kwamba air contain different number of bacteria, and without bacteria tusingeweza kusurvive. So some of the bacteria, they are beneficial, while some of them they are harmful. Since air contain different number of bacteria and we have different number of diseases ambazo zina spread by air. For example, we have this coronavirus, tuberculosis, and many of the diseases, influenza. Hizo zote zinakuwa transmitted through tunaita respiratory aerosols. Mtu akipiga chafya, vile chembe aerosols ukizivuta unapata hiyo disease. So macrophages, alveolar macrophages, they tend to kill microorganisms ambao wamefika kwenye lungs. That means kwa mfano kwenye hair nostril we have hairs. So some of the microorganisms ambao watapita pale wataenda kukutana alveolar microphages. Some of them watakuwa trapped na mucus along the bronchi, lakini kama ukishindwa kupita kwenda kwenye alveolus, they will meet with the alveolar microphages. And the fact that the alveolar microphages, they are involved in the killing of the microorganisms, can be revealed in the pathogenesis of tuberculosis. A very good example of how the macrophages, they are doing their work is in the pathogenesis of tuberculosis. Mtu anapokuwa anapata kifua kikuu, for most of us kifua kikuu tayari tunacho. Kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu ya magari yanayopanda mwendo kasi, daladala, kuna congestion, and some of people they have Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So most of us we have Mycobacterium tuberculosis organism. So kama tukafanya test in the hospital, tukafanya test screening ya tuberculosis, most of us will be found with the tuberculosis. But now, why do we survive without having the symptoms of tuberculosis? Why do we survive without tuberculosis to be manifested or to be revealed? It is because of the presence of the alveolar microphages. So when the Mycobacterium tuberculosis reaches the lungs or reaches the alveoli microphages, they tend to engulf the bacteria. And if the bacteria fail to prevent the function of the digestive enzymes from the alveolar microphages, that means the bacteria will either become dormant or will die. So that's why most of the time the bacteria become dormant. So akibecome dormant, manake ni still ana survive, lakini hawezi kumanifest what symptoms. However, later after many years, kama ukipata infection tena za bacteria ule, manake ataenda kuungana na leo mwanzo. So kwa sababu alikuwa hajakufa, alikuwa tu engulfed by the alveolar microphages, hapo ndipo unaweza kupata symptoms za tuberculosis. So tuberculosis always inakuwa manifested kwenye people ambao wako immunodeficiency. For example, watu wenye ukimwi au wazee au any immunodeficient, mtu ambaye tumefanya splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, tumefanya vitu kama hivyo. Tunapofanya hepatomegaly na splenomegaly, kwa mfano spleen is the lymphoid tissue, inahusika katika synthesis of the immune cells. So removing the spleen, that means you are removing the portion of the immune cells which could be found by the spleen. So most of people ambao wanakuwa ni immunocompromised, yani wana immunity ndogo, wanapata tuberculosis. That means sio wanapata manifestation of tuberculosis, kwa sababu tuberculosis wengi wanayo, ambao tayari tunaishi kama kwenye mazingira ya Tanzania, wengi tuna tuberculosis. But the manifestation of tuberculosis is in the immunocompromised person, yani ambaye hana immunity nzuri. So by starting, the wall of the alveoli is primarily composed of the simple squamous epithelium. Gaseous exchange occur easily across this very thin epithelium. So the simple squamous epithelium, they perform the function of gaseous exchange. Macrophages are protective cells that remove debris, microbes by phagocytosis. And the surfactant secreting cells are cuboidal cells found within an alveolus that secretes surfactant which coat the alveolar surface and lower the substantial of the alveolar fluid. So I will study later in detail more about these types of cells. But now let's continue with other explanations regarding the alveolus. So we'll study later about surfactant producing cell and the role of surfactant. So the inside surface of alveolar lined with the alveolar fluid, and in this alveolar fluid we have water. In this fluid creates surface tension due to strong attractive force between the water molecule, which is cohesive force, the force between molecules of the same substance. So due to the presence of cohesive force between water molecules, there will be attraction between water molecules, and hence we will develop what you call the surface tension. So surfactant act as detergent, which tend to decrease the surface tension of fluid inside of the alveolus, and thus increase the rate of gaseous exchange. Now let's move to the adaptations of alveolus to its functions. Adaptation of alveolus to its function. So we have discussed the features of the alveolus, how it is composed, and actually when we are talking of adaptation, that means the structure which aid a certain function. So adaptation, ukiulizwa swali lake, hata kama haukumbuki kabisa vitu ambavyo umefundishwa darasa, unasema structure na unasema inasaidia kufanya nini. So for example, you see alveoli have large surface area for gaseous exchange. That is adaptation. Large surface area is a feature. And for what? For gaseous exchange. Then the second adaptation, the gas have short distance to travel because the wall of alveolus are very thin. Or you can say wall of alveolus is made up of the simple squamous bacteria which are very thin. Thus it is easier for the gases to travel across it. Then number 3, alveoli have good supply of blood for transportation of gases. As you have said that alveoli is supplied by the pulmonary artery and is drained by the pulmonary vein. So you have the very good supply to the alveoli. Then number 4, they are closely packed together, hence facilitate gaseous exchange easier. Number 5, they contain collagen fiber, hence facilitate easier expansion and recoiling of the lungs. So here they do not contain collagen. It is collagen and elastic fibers. So actually the point was like incomplete. So they contain collagen and elastic fiber. Then number 6 is surfactant is present. This component that lower surface tension between the liquids or between a liquid and a solid. So surfactant may act as detergent or wetting agent, emulsifier and foaming agent. These are the simple explanations about the adaptations of the alveolus. So we have a continuation of our session here. Let's see how the alveolus can be seen in the light microscope. However, my diagram cannot be clear 100%, but you can observe some of the features which we have already discussed in the previous pages. The features which we have discussed, you can observe them here. So I want just to illustrate what I was explaining in the previous pages. So for example, here as you can see, we have the macrophages. As you can see, we have the macrophages, and the macrophages, they are like special phagocytic cells in the alveolus. Then you have the collagen fibers. These are the collagen fibers, collagen and elastic fibers. All of these, they are collagen and elastic fibers. All of these. Then you have the blood capillaries. This is the blood capillary with the red blood cells inside. Then here, these are the epithelial cells. So this is the epithelial cell, and this is the nucleus of epithelial cell. The nucleus of epithelial cell, and this is the nucleus of epithelial cell. And these are the simple squamous epithelium. Then you have the surfactant producing cell. So when the surfactant is produced, it tends to line the inside of the alveoli, so as to decrease the surface tension. Lines the inside of the alveoli to decrease surface tension. So we have the neighboring alveolus from this diagram. Neighboring alveolus, as you can see, this is an alveoli. Also, this is an alveoli. This is an alveoli. This is also an alveoli. This is an alveoli. We have 5 neighboring alveoli from this diagram. So as you can see, we have other capillaries here. This is another capillary. Again, this is another capillary. So these ensure good blood supply, and then the gaseous exchange can take place between this capillary and this alveoli or this alveoli. So this simply ensure the efficient gaseous exchange process. So that's the microscopic view of alveoli, how it can be seen in the microscope. The alveoli, how it can be seen in the microscope. So this diagram, I have downloaded it from Google. I've downloaded this from Google, and it is somehow showing how the alveoli is. However, it's not so much clear as what I have explained. So what I have explained, this one is from BS. This diagram is from biological science. So you can visit the book, and then you can see this diagram. I don't remember the exact page. So you can see this diagram. Here we have the septal cell, or the surfactant producing cells, and then as you can see, some of the features, they are not shown clearly, but you can see we have the epithelial cell. This is the epithelial cell. Then we have the monocyte. We have the blood vessel, blood capillary. Then you have the collagen fibers. Connective tissue. So you can see blood capillary. Then here we have alveolar microphage. So the features, they are not clearly shown as how they are present in the diagram, which I took from biological science book. Now let's see about the law of surfactant, and then we will move to the process of gaseous exchange at the alveoli. So let's discuss about the law of surfactant. So surfactant, as you said, it is the fluid which tend to decrease the substantial for gaseous exchange in the lungs. So what we are saying about surfactant ni kwamba kwanza it lower the substantial. Hiyo ndio rule ya kwanza, ni major. It lower the substantial of the fluid layer lining the alveolus, and thereby reduce the amount of effort needed to breathe in and inflate the lung. Kwa ile nguvu ambayo utakiwa utumie kuvuta hewa, ile pale unakuwa na reduce kutumia nini? Surfactant. Kwa mtu akiwa hana surfactant ya kutosha, lazima atapata shida sana kupumua, and hence atakufa. Lakini ya pili ni kwamba it speeds up the transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Inaongeza transportation yake. Na ya tatu, ina kill bacteria ambao wanafika kwenye alveoli. Ina kill bacteria uchilichi. So the lack of surfactant is the major cause of death. Lack of surfactant is the major cause of death in the premature baby in England. Is how they have explained here. Lack of surfactant. So surfactant is constantly being secreted and reabsorbed in a healthier lung. It is first made in the lungs of a fetus when it is about 23 weeks old. This is the main reason why the fetus is considered to be incapable of independent existence before 24 weeks, and thereby determines the legal age limit for abortion in the UK. So that means tunasema mtu amfanya abortion maana yake ni mtoto ametoka na yule mtoto hawezi kusurvive. Lakini ni case kama yule mtoto ametoka na anaweza kusurvive, that means it is just considered as the premature birth. So kuna some of the question nimewashawahi kutana nazo, some of the students, they are asking, why is it possible for the baby to born with 7 months and survive, but the baby born in 8 months does not survive? Hapo labda tu kama iliwahi tokea case moja, lakini normally that is not true, because kama mtoto alizaliwa miezi 7 akaweza kusurvive, that means miezi 8 pia ataweza kusurvive, because the major cause of death in infants and neonates, it is lack of surfactant. So if the child is born with a lot of amount of surfactant, she will survive. He or she will survive regardless of the age. So baby is born prematurely are at risk of being deficient in surfactant. This causes a condition known as respiratory distress syndrome, RDS, respiratory distress syndrome, which is caused by the lack of surfactant, in which breathing is very difficult and is one of the main causes of premature death. One among the main causes of premature death is the respiratory distress syndrome. Without surfactant, the substantiation of the fluid in the alveoli is about 10 times higher than normal, and the alveoli collapse after each expiration. It also requires much greater effort to expand them again when breathing in than when surfactant is present. So tunavyokuwa breathe in and out in the absence of surfactant. Tunavyokuwa tunafanya expiration, kama mkoa kuna surfactant, the alveoli would collapse. But tunafanya inspiration, ingekuwa ni kazi sana kuweza kuvuta hewa. Kwa sababu gani? Alveoli zimeshafanya collapse. So from there, let's continue to see the process of gaseous exchange at the alveoli. So we have discussed about the concept of surfactant. Then we have discussed about the concept of the rule of surfactant, ambayo ni kill microorganism. Surfactant ina kill microorganism, ina easier the process of gaseous exchange, na pia surfactant ina decrease the substantiation. Now let's see how the process of gaseous exchange takes place at the alveoli. So we know kwamba hewa inaingia kwa pua, kishaingia kwa pua inaenda kwa lungs, ikifika kwa lungs inaenda kwa alveoli, na ikifika kwa alveoli inafanywa gaseous exchange, inaingia kwenye blood. Lakini what we are discussing here is what exactly happens at the alveoli. What happens kama tumevuta hewa which is rich in oxygen, na kama kwenye blood kuna hewa which is rich in carbon dioxide, what happens? So kama umeangalia session 2, I will explain that water and water and blood, they travel in opposite direction in order to facilitate the process of gaseous exchange. Why? It is because if they would be traveling in the parallel direction, concentration ingechange na baadaye ingefika equilibrium, so it could not continue. But in the alveoli, the situation is different because blood is passing there continuously. So alveoli, hata kama inachukua air from outside, when it reaches the lungs, the air is taken by the blood, and then alveoli inachukua carbon dioxide na pereka nje. So each alveoli is surrounded by a network of blood capillaries, which come from the pulmonary artery and unite or combine to form pulmonary vein. These capillaries are extremely narrow, and the red blood cell are squeezed at the path through. So the squeezing of a red blood cell has two advantages. First, it slows down the passage of blood, or it slows down the speed of passage of blood. By slowing down the speed of passage of blood, it increases the time. It increases the time for the red blood cell to take oxygen. But the second thing, when it squeezes, it increases the surface area which is in contact with the blood vessel, and hence that means it tends to take more oxygen. So this is not only slow down the passage of blood, allowing more time for diffusion, but also resulting in a larger surface area of the red blood cell touching the endothelium, and thus facilitating diffusion of oxygen. The oxygen in the inspired air dissolves in the moisture of the alveolar epithelium and diffuses across this and the epithelium of the capillaries into the blood plasma, then into the red blood cell. So kilichopo ni kwamba kwanza unatakiwa unajua kwamba the capillaries, they are thin. Why being thin is advantageous? It is advantageous because it increases the surface area for gaseous exchange. Also, it tends to increase the surface area and time. Kwanza ina increase time kwa sababu ya travel slow, lakini pia surface area in terms of the exposed area. So we are continuing with what we have explained. We are continuing with what we have explained in this part about the gaseous exchange at the alveoli. So ni kwamba tunakuwa tuna kitu ambacho kinakuwa kinatokea pale kwenye alveoli. Gesi inavuka nafika. So when blood reaches the alveoli, itakuwa rich in carbon dioxide. Hiyo nadhani unajua. When blood reaches the alveoli, inakuwa rich in carbon dioxide. Sasa blood inavuka rich in carbon dioxide, tunakuwa tunatafuta namna ya kulimove ile carbon dioxide na blood ichukue oxygen. So the diagram here simply can explain what is happening at the alveoli when the blood reaches at the alveoli. So let's discuss this diagram. Now, as you can see from this diagram, as you can see, this diagram is from the biological science book. So as you can see from this diagram, here we have the deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood enters the pulmonary artery. Enters from the pulmonary artery. So this deoxygenated blood, remember these are the red blood cells. Red blood cells. These are the red blood cells. So the red blood cells, they are passing through the capillary, and when they are passing through the capillary, as we said, they are squeezed. Koni kama zinabanwa, they are squeezed. So when they are squeezed, they increase the time for gaseous exchange, and they increase the surface area for gaseous exchange. This is the two importance of squeezing the red blood cell, or these are the two importance for capillaries being a small diameter. Now, as you can see here, oxygen tend to diffuse. Oxygen tend to diffuse from this side to this side into the red blood cell. But because this blood was deoxygenated, so it was rich in carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide, it diffuses out into the alveoli. Carbon dioxide diffuses out into the alveoli. So what is the implication, or how does this process actually happens? This process is governed by diffusion at all. There is no active transport of gases here. The process is governed by diffusion. So as you can see, this layer, it is very thick. I mean, it is very thin, very thin. So when blood comes from this side, it passes through this layer containing surfactant, then it passes through this. All of this is called the gaseous exchange membrane. So what I can say is that this process is maintained by diffusion. So the oxygenated gas goes out, and then it is transported to the heart. But this process is governed by diffusion. So in order to make sure that diffusion is efficient, there must be some kinds of technique. Why, or what kind of adaptation enable the diffusion to be efficient? For example, if oxygenated blood travel, that means it gives the opportunity for the deoxygenated blood to remove oxygen to take carbon dioxide to take other oxygen. Kwa hiyo tunachokuja kuona hapa ni kwamba this is what happens in the lungs, the actual process of gaseous exchange. So now let's continue our discussion. Let's continue our discussion regarding regarding the process of gaseous exchange. So what we are saying ni kwamba inside the red blood cell, the oxygen combined with the respiratory pigment hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveolus to leave the lungs in the expired air. Diffusion is efficient because, so the important thing for you to know here is that carbon dioxide goes out of the blood, oxygen into the blood. But diffusion is efficient. Why is diffusion efficient in the gaseous exchange? Kwa nini usingetumia another mechanism kufanya gaseous exchange? Kwa nini ungetumia diffusion? Why diffusion tunategemea kwamba ingekuwa slow and things like that. So diffusion is efficient because alveoli kwanza, they have large surface area. They have large surface area to volume ratio. Pia the gases have a short distance to travel. So large surface area, short distance to travel. A steep concentration gradient is maintained by ventilation. Steep concentration gradient is maintained by ventilation. A good blood supply and the presence of an oxygen carrying compound, that is hemoglobin. Then surfactant is present. So now kuna surfactant, kuna steep concentration gradient, pia kuna gases have short distance to travel. Na kuna hili swali ambalo wanaliuliza, however the question is not so much important kwa sababu ya kwamba sio explanation question, lakini any question you might be asked in the exam, so it is important for you to know. Wanauliza how many times must a molecule of oxygen diffuse across the cell surface membrane in passing from the inside of an alveolus to hemoglobin. So that means from the inside of the alveolus we have the epithelial lining of the alveolus. So it enters in the epithelial lining, then it goes out, that is 2 times. Then from there we have the endothelium of the blood capillary. It enters and it goes out, it is 2 times, and then later it is into the red blood cell, so it is 5 times. You must explain also what does that term of 5 times mean. So this explanation explain what was happening in that diagram, because I started like in front, then I've come back, because that diagram it is in the next page. So the diameter of blood capillaries is smaller than that of the red blood cell passing through them. This means that the red blood cells have to be squeezed through the capillaries by blood pressure. During this process, they bend into an umbrella shape. An umbrella shape, kama ambavyo unaweza kuona hapo, ziko umbrella shape. They bend into an umbrella shape, exposing more of their surface area to the alveolus and allowing greater uptake of oxygen. Progress of the cell is also relatively slow, thus increasing the time available for the gases exchange to take place. When blood leaves the alveolus, it is processes. So what is explained here is what I said from this diagram that we have already discussed. So blood tends to pass from this point to this point, but here the blood it is full of carbon dioxide and less oxygen. Here the blood is full of oxygen and not carbon dioxide. So unaweza kuona kwamba huku kuna carbon dioxide nyingi inatoka by diffusion, huku kuna oxygen nyingi inayoenda kwenye heart and then finally the body. So this marks the end of our session. Kama utakuwa na swali lolote unaweza kauliza hapo, lakini also if you need these notes, contacts zitakuwa kwa description hapo chini, unaweza kutafuta uone, unaweza ukazipata hizo notes. Lakini out of that natakia tu masomo mema, na kwa next session tutaanza kudiscuss with the concept of metabolic rate. So thank you everybody, and let me wish you nice studies.